As a beginner in Premiere Pro, you should be able to create this type of titles easily. I am going to show you how to do this step by step. Let's have a quick preview of how these titles look like. Interesting. Let's get started. Now, as you are following along, I will also leave a link to download these templates for free in the video description. Kindly support our channel by subscribing and giving us a like. Thank you, and let's begin. Alright, let's start by creating a new sequence. Go to File, New, and choose Sequence from here. Under this preset, I'll select 1080p at 24 frames per second. Then I'll rename my sequence to Titles. Then click OK. To the right, we find the Essential Graphics panel. If you cannot see this panel, go to Window and select it from here. On the Essential Graphics panel, we find the Browse tab and Edit tab. If you click on the Browse tab, you can be able to have a preview of inbuilt templates that ship with Premiere Pro. But since we are going to be creating this title from scratch, let's click on the Edit tab. If you click on this little page icon, you can add a text layer, a shape layer, or import a video file, Illustrator file, or Photoshop file. My preferred way of adding text is with the dedicated text tool. I'll select it from here. You can also press T on the keyboard. Now I'll just click here to start inputting my text. Once we have our text, we can further customize the text with these settings here on the right. For example, you can see the font I'm using. You can also set the font weight from here or the font size from here. I'm going to select just this portion of the text and change the weight from bold to regular and turn on background. Once this option is checked, we can further customize the transparency of the background layer by dragging this slider to the left or to the right. You can see that the text layer on the timeline is too small. To zoom in, simply click here and drag to the left. Just like so. With this layer still selected, let's use the text tool and add another text layer below it. You can see that it automatically picked the settings I formatted for the first text layer. I'll select this text and change the weight from bold to regular. Then I'll change the fill from white to black. Then I'll click on the background and make it white. The reason it is not pure white is because of the transparency option here. Let's take that up to 100%. To position the text better, you can zoom in by clicking here and choosing a zoom level, maybe 150. Then with this text selected, you can move it here. Now everything is well aligned. Let's zoom back out. Before we start animating these text layers, let's understand anchor point and timeline. Basically, the timeline is this panel right here. Once you drag this playhead around, you can also see a representation here on the effects control panel. This portion here is where we add keyframes to control the animation. This portion is your overall timeline where you add video clips and so on. Then the next thing you need to understand is anchor point. If I select this text layer here and then just hover outside to rotate it, you can see that the rotation is happening at a certain point right here. But if I hover inside and then just move that anchor point to the center, let's rotate again. You can see where the rotation is happening right now. The same thing applies with scale. If I move the anchor point here, by the way, if you need to snap, just hold Ctrl key and snap it there. And if you want to have these lines, then click on the setting icon here and turn on show markers. If I need to scale this text, since the anchor point is now here, let's go to the text properties by clicking here, and we have the position, the scale, rotation, opacity, and so on. If I now increase the scale, you can see that it is increasing where the anchor point has been positioned. If I now move the anchor point to the middle, you can see that the scale is also from the middle. So it is very important to take note of where the anchor point is placed before you start animating. Let's start. I'll press Ctrl Z to undo all those changes, and for this particular layout, I'll move the anchor point right here. First of all, I'll start by centering the anchor point here. I'll click in the middle and just hold the Ctrl key, that will be the command key, to snap it there. Then I'll select this text layer and also try to center this one. I'll just move it here as well. As I explained earlier, the position of the timeline is also represented here on the effects control panel. And this portion is where we add our keyframes. So let's start by going to 15 frames. You can do that manually by dragging the playhead around, but my preferred way to be more precise is to just click here and input .15. 0.15 will take you to 15 frames. If you need to go to 20 frames, input .20, it will take you to 20 frames. Let's return back to 15 frames. So we have 15 frames here on the main timeline, and also on the animation timeline. I'll come to the scale here and click on the stopwatch here. A keyframe is added for us here, which means at 15 frames, the scale of this text layer should be the way it is on the canvas. Now let's go back to 1 frame or 0, like so, and from the beginning, we actually want the scale to be 0. So let's click here and input 0 there. And by committing that change, another keyframe is added for us right here. If we now press the spacebar, you can see a scale from the position of the anchor point we place here. Let's make the animation interesting by right-clicking on the first keyframe, and then let's choose ease in. Right-click on the second keyframe and let's choose ease out. Okay. When the animation comes in on 15 frames, we need to go to the end, which is somewhere around here. And then let's simply add another keyframe here by clicking on this diamond button here. What this simply means is that from 0 to 15 frames, the animation will come in, and in between this time, it has to stay on the screen. But after that time, like here, it has to go back out, it has to go back to 0. So let's input 0 here. And let's see our animation. It comes to the screen and stay for a while during the time of the animation and goes back out. That is nice. Let's position the playhead on this keyframe. To snap on the timeline while moving with the playhead, you can simply hold the shift key. That will easily snap on those keyframes like so. Let's position the playhead on 15 frames. Then let's collapse this group by clicking on it. Then let's select the other text layer. And let's also click this tiny arrow beside it to expand its properties. Let's collapse source text, and we are only interested in the opacity here. With the opacity, I'll shift in front a bit. Let's go to 16 frames. I'll click here and input 16 frames here. Just a bit. Then I'll add a keyframe for the opacity, which means at this time, let's make the opacity 0. Then I'll just go in front a few frames and then take the opacity to 100%. And let's preview our text again. So the designation or the tagline only comes when this layer has settled down. Let's move the playhead to the end with the shift key to snap it there. I'll simply click in the middle here to add another keyframe for the opacity. Then I'll move forward just a few frames and also take the opacity down to 0. So let's have a preview of this animation. It comes in, the host comes in, stays for a while and goes back out. Now let's make the whole animation responsive. To do that, you remember we created 15 frames from the beginning and added few frames in front. So on the text layer here, let's make sure nothing is selected. If you have any text layer here selected, you will not have responsive time. So just click on this empty portion to deselect every layer here. You now have responsive design / time. On the intro duration, which means the intro of the animation to come in, let's just make it 20 frames. Click here and input .20 to input 20 frames. Now it added this gray bar here. You can see that it is almost overlapping with this last keyframe. So let's go in front to 23 frames. Click here and input .23 to give a little bit of space in front. Let's do the same with the outro duration. Let's make this one +25, just like so, to cover up all those keyframes. The reason this is important is because if you have footage on your timeline that needs to be extended, you can extend that footage together with the title without actually messing up with the keyframes. Let's have a final preview of this animation before exporting it to our library. Comes in and goes back out. So cool. To export it, the first thing I need you to do, guys, is to put everything here inside one group. So select this layer, hold the shift key and click here, then just click on this group icon here. Now that both layers are inside one group, let's rename the group. I'll call it zoom in text, just for example. Then I'll right click on the text layer on the timeline, and then I'll choose export as motion graphics template. Then let's rename it to scale zoom. And I want it to be under the local templates folder. I'll also include the video thumbnail and click OK. You can add keywords if you want. For example, I can just input maybe scale, zoom, and click OK. In that way, you can always use these tags or keywords to easily find this template if you want. Click OK now. Then I'll just double click on the project panel here and import this clip. Then I'll simply drag the clip to the timeline. You can see it looks like an interview. So let's import that title to see how it is used here. I'll position the playhead somewhere around here. Then under browse this time, I'll simply search for that title. Here it is scale zoom. I'll just drag it onto my timeline like so. Let's have a preview. Now we can see that the zoom comes in, but it is too big. So let's go to the edit tab. Then select the text layer, and we have our group here. Select the whole group and then simply move it to your desired location first of all. Then we can also come here and make sure this link icon is not turned off like this. We should have just one scale here and just scale the text down. I can then position it here closely like so. Now if I need to customize the colors here from the background and so on, that's very easy to do. I'll just expand the group, select this text layer, and maybe I want the opacity to be full. I make it full here. Then on this other text layer, maybe I want the background to be black, so I click on the background and choose black here. And this time I make the text white. Okay. Let's have a preview again. It comes in nicely on the video clip just like that and goes back out. Now this is why it was very necessary for us to add responsive time for the intro and outro. If I want this text animation to appear right from the beginning, you notice that by default it is going to end here. But this is where our video clip actually ends. But since we made it responsive, we can just position the timeline here at the end and then simply come to the end of the text layer and just drag it there. Now if I zoom on the timeline here, you can see it still respects the zoom in of the animation and the zoom out. So congratulations, so far you have created your first Premiere Pro title and save it as a motion graphics template. Let's move to the next animation. The second animation is a little bit challenging, but trust me, you can do this. Let's start by laying down our text as usual. So with the text tool, I'll click here and input my text. But this time I have to be more specific. I'll put the text individually. So the first text layer here will be John. I'll select all this text and make it bold. Then with the text tool again, still selecting the text layer, I'll click and input another text, Demuro. Then I'll just position the text layer here. If you look under the edit tab, we have these different layers here with the first layer for John and the next layer for Demuro, which is very important. Now let's add some background to it. So for that, I'll select the rectangle tool. I'll just click here and input background. And just like with Photoshop, the stacking order of these shapes really matter. So this background has to be at the bottom for the other text layers to be visible. I'll just rename this shape to background. Then I'll click on the fill and change it to this fill, this orange fill, this one. Okay. Then with the rectangle tool again, I'll create another small rectangle here, just like so. Then for this one, I actually want a white fill, so I'll click here and choose white. And then for the text, I'll grab the text tool and input photographer there. Then I'll select this text and then reduce the size of the text to 40%. Then I'll change the font weight from bold to regular. Then I'll make it black. Then with the selection tool, I'll just move it here. Nice. Let's double click on this text layer and change the fill from white to black, just like so. Okay. Now the general design and look is over. Let's group our text to stay organized. And grouping this time is very important because we are actually going to do it in a different way. We'll put groups inside of groups in order for this to work. So I'll select the background here, click on this group icon, and I'll just rename it to background BG. Click enter. Then with the background selected, I'll grab the rectangle tool and simply drag around it to create a max. Since the max is currently on top, I'll drag the max onto the background. It's currently a shape right now, not a max, but I intend to rename this to max. Then with the max selected, I'll choose this option, max with shape. So the rectangle behind is only visible just within the max. If I select the selection tool and move that, you can see that the rectangle is only visible just within the portion with the max. Let's undo that. Let's do the same with John, Demuro and photographer. I'll also put John inside the group. Then with this layer selected, I'll grab the rectangle tool, just trace around here like so to cover it up. I'll position it better. Then I'll move it to the group with John, then rename it to Max. You can always do this without actually renaming the layers, but it's a good thing to stay organized. With this text layer on top selected, click here to choose Max with shape. Now John is only visible within this Max. Okay, that's good. Let's rename the group to John. Let's continue with Demuro. The layer is selected. Let's group it. Then with this layer, let's select the rectangle tool and also max it. Let's put some shape here. Then let's drag it to the group. Since the shape is on top, let's click Max with shape. Let's rename it to Max. Then let's rename this group to Demuro. Now this whole section is ready, so I'm going to add one group for that section. Then I'll drag John inside. Then drag the background inside. Now everything there is within this group, so let's rename this group to John Demuro. We can now toggle it on and off, but we have everything set inside the group. Let's do the same thing with the photographer group here and the shape layer. So I'll group that. Then in the end, let's add one master group, and then let's call this split text animation or split text, just like so. Then here John Demuro will go in and photographer will also go in. Let's start by animating the text layer on top here. So I'll expand the group, then expand John Demuro, then I'll go to John, select the John layer itself, not the Max. Then on the effects control, we also have John layer here. Let's open it up, and we don't want the source text. Let's close that. For now, I'm only interested with the position. So again, I'll click here and go to 15 frames, .15, 15 frames, and that is where I want the position to be, but from the beginning. And if you look on the position here, we have the X and Y values. The X is the left and right movement, like so. And the Y is the up and down movement. Okay, so don't freak out there. So what I simply want here is to take John this way to the right, so it comes in from the right. Let's right click on this first keyframe, interpolation, and let's choose ease in. Right click here, and then let's choose interpolation ease out. Let's see, it comes in from there like so. Now let's move the playhead to the end, somewhere around here. And then let's simply click here to add a keyframe there, and once it is almost getting to an end, the text layer should go back in. So we click on the X value and take it this way back, just like so. Let's have a preview. It comes in, stay on screen for a while, and when it gets to the end, it goes back out. Okay, now let's do the same thing with the other layers. So I will snap this keyframe here on the playhead, then I'll select this text layer. We are done here, so I collapse it, but we still have keyframes representation here, and currently the playhead is on the first keyframe. Let's open the properties up. Then at 15 frames, I'll also keyframe the animation there, but from the beginning. While this one is going in, this one should also come in. So I click here and take this one this way. Then right click on the first keyframe, interpolation ease in. Here choose ease out. Let's see, both text layers come in like that. Nice. Then let's start moving here, then hold the shift key to snap it to the last keyframe here. Then let's just click here to add a keyframe there, and let's just snap it again. When the other text layer disappears, this one should also go back out like this. Okay, so let's have a preview from the beginning. This is it, it comes in like so, stays for a while and goes back out. Nice. Okay, now we are done with this text layer. Let's collapse the group and let's go back to 15 frames. And the next layer within that group is the background. So here is the background. We open the background up, select the background itself and not the Max. At 15 frames, we have to make sure the background is selected. You can see it here. Open it up. Then now we are only interested with the path option here. So let's animate the path by clicking on the keyframe at 15 frames. Now a keyframe has been added for us here, which means at this time the shape layer should be visible the way it is on the screen. But from one frame or from the beginning, how do we want? Now I want to select the selection tool, then I'll highlight the background itself, which is this one, select it. Then since the playhead is at the beginning, you notice there's no keyframe here. The time we modify this path, there will be a keyframe at the beginning there, just like so. So it comes out very fast, just like so. Let's see. Okay. Then the next thing I'm noticing is that from the beginning, this line is visible. I don't actually want that to be visible. So I'm going to select the first keyframe here and simply move that out a bit. Then I'll go right to the beginning here. I'll look for the opacity transformation. I'll keyframe it here, make the opacity 0. Then before this first keyframe, I'll just move in front. Before this text starts showing up, the opacity should go back to 100% for that animation to happen. Let's have a quick look. So from the beginning, nothing is visible, but once we play the animation, everything becomes visible. Okay, very interesting. Now let's also snap the playback to the end and perform the following action. Nice. Let's see how it looks now. Comes in, stays for a while, goes back out. The good thing is that the edges are not visible right from the beginning or from the end. Nothing stays on the screen, everything goes out. Now we are done with the first set of animation. Let's collapse this group. And now let's go to the photographer layer here. Let's move the playhead first of all to 15 frames.15 like so. Then I'll expand the photographer layer. I'll select the photographer text itself. Then I'll open its properties from here. Let's collapse this. I'm done with you. On the photographer properties, the one I'm looking for is also position. So at 15 frames, I'll add a keyframe there. Then from the beginning, right here, the text should come from the bottom like so. Let's have a preview. That is it. So let's right click here. Then let's choose ease in, right click on the second keyframe, let's choose ease in as well. If we have a look now, you see, it comes in. Then let's snap the playhead to the end, just like so. And then let's add a keyframe there and also move it to the end again. From here, we want this text layer to go down. So I'll take it back down, just like so. Now let's have a quick preview again. It comes in just with the other text, stay for a while, get back out, just like so. Now I also want the same thing to happen with this shape behind it. Now we can just copy and paste keyframes, but I want to show you this step by step. So let's go back to 15 frames.15. Then this time let's select the background from the photographer group, which is this one. Let's select the shape itself. Then at 15 frames, I want the position of it. Where's the layer? Let's collapse this layer first of all. Here's the layer. Let's click this arrow to expand to see its properties. Let's add a keyframe to the position right there. But from the beginning, it should also come from the bottom. So let's click on the Y position here and just take it down. Let's right click on the first keyframe, interpolation, and let's choose ease in, right click here, and then let's choose ease out. Okay, let's have a quick preview. It comes in beautifully like so. Then let's snap the playhead to the end like so. Then let's add a keyframe there. Then let's snap it again to the last section, and then the shape has to go back out, so let's just drag this one down like so. Okay, let's have a final preview here. This is it. Everything comes in nicely. Wait for a while and then go back out. Now just like you will do in After Effects, you can also sequence the order of these animations. What I mean by that is that if you look on the layers panel here, we have the background and the photographer. Okay, then what we can do is we can make the background appear before the text itself, or the text before the background. And I think the background should come before the text. So let's go to the text layer and delay the timing. Let's select the text layer from here. Then let's collapse this. Here's the text layer here. These are the keyframes that have been used for the text layer. So let's just drag those in front a bit. And if we have a preview, you can see that the shape starts coming up. After some time, the text layer appears, which is actually what I wanted. Here we go. So nice. Let's take that inward just a bit, like so. Now the last part is for us to make it responsive by blocking all the keyframes from the intro and the outro. So with these layers here, let's just make sure nothing is selected there. We have just this one group, make sure nothing is selected, and we have responsive time. Let's go to the intro duration. This one I think maybe 24 frames will do, 0.24. Now all those keyframes have been blocked. You can scroll up and down here to check. It looks good. 24 is too much. Let's make it 22. So let's make it just like so. Then for the outro duration, let's click here and let's make it 0.24. You never know. Let's see. Okay, everything is well covered. Let's make it 0.22 as well. Yeah. Alright, we are done with the design and animation. You can see that this one was actually lengthy, but let's save it as a motion graphics template. Let's right click here. Then let's choose this option. Let's give a proper name. I'll call it text splitting. Then I'll include video thumbnail. Then I'll give keyword like maybe text and split. Then click OK. Now that template is ready, let's get rid of it from the timeline and let's import some footage. I have this video of a photographer here. I'll bring it inside Premiere Pro and move it to the timeline. This is where I want the animation to begin, so I'll go to browse and type text splitting here. Now we have our text right here, so we can just drag it to the timeline and let's have a preview. First, you can see that the position of the text is not okay, but because this is actually a template, we can select it and you see the group we have right here. With this group selected, you can just move with the selection tool. Let's position it here and then you can adjust the scale by just dragging it down like so. Then let's move it here. Now let's have quick preview. Let's go full screen. And you see how nicely the template appears on the screen. Now you can go ahead and customize this title to suit your needs and use it in your different projects. So thank you so much for watching this video, guys. This is actually our first video on Premiere Pro in this channel. And in upcoming days or months or weeks, we will be uploading more and more tutorials like this. So comment down below to let us know. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in the next one tomorrow. Bye bye.